Welcome to Stand Out from the Crowd, the podcast dedicated to helping professionals and leaders amplify their voice, impact, and influence. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hello, beautiful people. Good morning, good afternoon, bonjour, salam alaikum, wherever you are in the world. I hope you are having a wonderful day. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Doreen, and I'm the host of the Stand Up from the Crowd podcast, the leadership podcast dedicated to helping you amplify your voice, impact, and influence. And so on this podcast, I have the privilege to interview every Wednesday live on LinkedIn leaders from all over the world, leaders in the industry who share their story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we know as leaders, like, it's a roller coaster. It's a real journey, but we are here and we are passionate about making an impact. And today's guest is not different. Today's guest has a special story, and when I heard about her story, I was like, no, I really want you to share it with us, because this is a reality that a lot of you may face, and we know, or at least you know, someone who has been suffering in silence. So let me give you further information about our standout guest before I bring her on. So today's guest is Marianne Balogun. She is a seasoned marketing communication specialist with over 10 years of experience supporting international clients and industry in strategic and communication matters. She is the author of the book, The Different Faces of Narcissism, How to Recognize, Neutralize, and Protect Yourself from Toxic People Disguised as Friends. Yes, yes, because it can happen in a professional setup, it can happen in a personal setup. These things happen, right? So in writing this book, Marianne hopes to help readers learn from her experience. She believes that you recognize narcissistic traits early and you can avoid falling into the trap. So when you know what are the red flags in front of you, when you know how to recognize the red flags, then you can avoid getting entangled by them. Right? So are you ready to get started? And let us know where you are tuning from. We know that we have a beautiful international community. So use the comment, share your experience, and ask your question. This, if you have been suffering, or if you have been, you know, seeing someone suffering, then this is an opportunity to get questions so you can get, or you can provide support. So without further ado, help me welcome Marianne.
Hi,
Hello,
Darren.
how are you doing?
How are you this beautiful summer afternoon?
Yes, we're doing well. And I must tell you, Marianne and I, we are based in Toronto, Canada, and today is a beautiful day. We are lucky to have a beautiful summer. It's rare enough for us to mention it today because listen, we have learned to enjoy and appreciate the beautiful weather in Canada.
Yes,
So,
we have.
Marianne, wow. So we were chatting before going live, and I was asking you questions about your experience. And you told me something I didn't know. You came to Canada not so long ago.
Yes, I came here in 2019. I came to study in 2019. I came to benefit one of the advantages of this beautiful country that we call Canada.
Yes. And so the thing is, when you told me the date you came to Canada, the first thing that came to my mind is, oh God. So as soon as she came, not so long after COVID happened. So
Yeah.
how was your experience like, being in a new country and finally, being like caught up in the COVID pandemic? How was it? How was your experience?
So I just came in, I just landed. I basically don't have any family here. I was lucky enough to make some friends in the college that I came to study at. And while I was just trying to settle in, the COVID pandemic hit, and the first wave, and the government had said that the lockdown had to happen. So it was quite unfortunate for me, that just coming in, I hadn't been able to explore this beautiful country, before the pandemic started. And as we all know, the pandemic went on for 2 years. So it was not a very good time. It was not a very good experience, I would say, for me, but I'm glad that we all came through it in good health. That's the most important.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the experiences that happened to me while the COVID was happening is what we're here to talk about today.
Yes, and exactly. We are going to talk about the different phases of narcissism. So, why this topic? What happened to you to make you want to write about it?
So I wouldn't say that I haven't encountered a narcissistic experience before. It happens. It's very commonplace these days. It happens everywhere. It happens in the workplace. It happens, within your personal relationship. It happens in marriages. So it's commonplace. But this one, I would say this one really impacted my life in that it was happening for a whole year. It took a while to even realize what was happening. It took a while to realize that I was being manipulated and I was being used to manipulate other people. It was very life shattering. There are a lot of people that it made them change. It impacted their lives, I would just say, in very serious ways. Made them make serious changes. So I
Yeah.
just felt, you know what? And when I was able to now take myself away from the whole situation, and I was able to sit down and reflect and connect the dots, I was like, I mean, I, people need to other people. I felt the need to share it with other people. I'm a kind of person that I'm driven to help. I'm driven to help people. I'm driven to help people achieve whatever it is. It might be in career or the personal life. So I felt the need to put it in a book, and it
Okay.
was it was happening for a whole year. So it was a lot of content already, and then I
Yeah.
just felt the need to share it so that whoever is lucky enough to not go into such an experience, if they're lucky enough to read it, they can be able to protect themselves. Because, like I said, while everything was happening, I had no idea what
It
was even
was
happening.
happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So this could be happening to other people. The
So
thing with Yeah, go
so
ahead.
let's take a look at what a narcissist is, because in order to understand that you are in a toxic environment or that you are being manipulated by a narcissist, you need to be able to recognize it. So
Hmm.
what would you qualify, or what are the traits, the common traits that qualify a narcissist?
Okay. Before I go into some of the characteristics to identify a narcissist, I'll give you a brief definition. You know,
Mhm.
so a narcissist typically has an inflated sense of their own importance. They have a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, and generally they lack empathy for others. So those three things are already traits to look out for. So when you see someone that you know it's not very considerate. It's not very considerate to other people's needs. You might want to take a step back and be like, might this person be a narcissist? So and then of course, narcissists are diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder. That's one of the clinical condition. You know,
So
some
do they know that they are narcissists then?
well, I'm not a psychotherapist or a psychologist, so I wouldn't know. But what I would say in regards to that, in like everything, I would say we, we all even have narcissistic tendencies, because in a sense where you decide sometimes that you want to be selfish, you know, that I think that that's a little bit of a narcissistic tendency in itself. But the difference is the types of narcissists. So this person is going out to inflict harm on you to feel better. Those are the kind of people that we are trying to protect ourselves against.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so can you now dive a little bit more into the traits? So you gave us a definition, the red flags, to at least, question ourselves on the nature of the relationship, and maybe the nature, the outcome that could come out of this relationship. And again, being at work or being in a personal setup. So now, what are some of the traits like that they are like a no?
Okay, so some of the characteristics to identify a narcissist or a person that has narcissist personality disorder is, of course, I just mentioned they have a very high sense of entitlement and they
Yeah.
require constant and excessive admiration. There are people that require that have sense of entitlement. I mean, I would say some growing children, toddlers have sense of entitlement. So that's why I said there's a narcissistic trait in every one of us. It's just how we manifest it, and how it affects people. And those are the ones that we need to protect ourselves against. They want to be recognized as superior every single time. They want to be recognized as superior, and they don't even contribute to the action that they want to be recognized for.
Okay.
They exaggerate their accomplishments, and you find that most of them take credit for other people's achievement. Now this happens in the workplace. You would see some of those bosses, that exaggerate their own accomplishments, exaggerate what they bring to the table, and then they end up taking credit for your work. I've seen it happen so many times. In my profession, I've put together stuff, documents, blah blah blah. We get to the client's office, the client is we're presenting to the client, and then the client says, "Oh, I like that." And the boss says, "Oh, I put it together," or instead of saying the team put it together, the boss takes credit for it. So it happens, but like I said earlier, it depends on how is it affecting that person. How is it affecting people? How is it affecting people positively or negatively?
And like, for those of you watching the live or watching the replay, let us know in the comment if you have ever encountered like someone like this. And when you talk about the boss taking credit for your work or for the teamwork, I'm sure many of the people in our audience have at least once experienced the same. So let us know in the comment, because I'm very curious to know, to see how many of you have a similar experience. So you mentioned, like, that was not your first time to encounter a narcissist person, being in a toxic situation, but this one, the latest one, stood out because it lasted for 1 full year. So can you give us more details or examples of what happened to you?
So it's a lot happened, and that's why it's been documented into a book. I think one of the first reasons why I thought, how do I share this experience? Because it's a lot. It has a lot of connecting factors. So how do I say, oh, this is what happened, that's what happened? So I'm going to have to, try and get people to read the book. It's just a 2-hour read, and it's available on Amazon. And of course, we did have some copies at the launch that just concluded launch that we had at the Toronto City Hall on the 15th. Um, I mean, I don't know. So when you ask me that, I'm like, where do I start?
So
You know.
can you give us an example, or maybe the one that was the more um, the more impact, the more impacted you may be, or one of the few that made you really think about it, the one that maybe made you realize, oh, okay, now because of what happened, now I can connect all the dots. This is happening, the time that was like too many times. Like, give us one or two examples.
Okay, so I would say it was because there were too many dots. That's why I was now able to now connect it. But like you said, one of the ones that impacted me was I saw this individual not care who they throw under the bus. They don't take accountability for anything, and while they are trying to make sure that they hurt whoever they hurt, they really don't care who they use. So I saw this individual use a member of her family, to send me messages, use the person's phones to send me a message. And, I was upset with that person, not knowing that it was somebody else that did it. And I remember saying, oh my God, that really touched me. I'm like, this poor person is going through this because, I mean, it was months later that I now found out. It's a very tricky, very sensitive situation. One of the other ones that I can remember clearly was this person coming to tell me something, and then when I say, "Oh, but you told me this person says, "No, I didn't." They always deny what they tell you, especially when you don't even have evidence. And then when you have evidence, they're going to now turn it on you. So they basically make you think that you're crazy. Meanwhile, they're the ones that are crazy. So when you then have like evidence to back it up that okay, this is what you said, this is what you said, then they turn it on you that oh, it's because you did that. That's why I had to say that. And there was just so many others. It was the gossiping, it was the being in front of me and saying something else, then going behind my back and gossiping about me and saying so many other things.
Okay.
And and so the funny thing is, they were actually red flags from the very first 2-3 weeks that I met this person. They were red flags, but I didn't identify them as red flags, which was why I thought, I need to put this in the book so that people don't fall into the same mistakes that I fell into. They were red flags, and but because I was more concerned, like you said, I just came in and COVID hit. So I was more concentrated on trying to settle in, trying to settle into this place. And then I now met people within my own community. So in trying to do that, I wasn't realizing what was happening right in front of me. So those were one of the dots that I was able to connect. Like, you know what, this actually happened from the very first couple of weeks that I met this person.
And usually that's often the case, like when we take a step back, we realize like, damn, but since day one, like we do notice things, but oftentimes we either choose to ignore them, or we just don't acknowledge them because we don't know really what's happening. So now that we know a little bit how to recognize a narcissist, how do we protect ourselves from them? How do we set up boundaries?
So, there are a number of them written in the book. I am going to run through some here. I think the very first is to avoid toxic people getting close to you. And it's like I just explained, it's very tricky. So, because in my own situation, I was new in the country, and I would say that one of my very top goals were to make friends. So in that case, how do you avoid toxic people when you're trying to make friends?
Yeah,
So
of
it's
course.
it's it's very tricky. But the trick is, just look out for things that don't match your energy. Energy is contagious. So look out, if the person's energy doesn't match yours, then just take a step back and pay a little bit more attention. Another is avoid people that badmouth others in front of you. And then you do realize that our instincts do tell us certain things. It's just that we avoid them. Our instincts will be like, when people act out of character in front of you. And so the other things about avoiding toxic people is that it's sometimes it can be funny because you realize that these same people are the one that's going to mask themselves as this very lovable, very nice person, which was what
Mm,
was in my own situation. So I'm like, how do I now know that this person is doing all this when this person is showing that they are these amazing people to me? So
mhm.
I mean, it can be very tricky. And then one more is we need to pay attention to body language. Pay attention to body language. It's very important. You because there's a saying that people tell you who they are. You're the ones that, which was what you had mentioned, something like that some moments ago. People tell you who they are, but we ignore the signs. Like sometimes we would, like in relationships, we would say things like, he did this, he did that. I mean, he had always done it, so why is it now a problem? So because I think, because sometimes when we're in love, we let the love blind the fact that our partners are doing certain things that we might not like, but then it's not important then because we're just in love. We don't make it an issue then, you know. So, I mean, avoid people who show no consideration for others, for other people's feelings. Avoid
Yeah,
people. Yeah, avoid people who are harsh in criticizing others. I think one of the other things that we just mentioned: stay clear of attention seekers. The attention seekers will throw anybody under the bus. I just gave you an example of how this person didn't mind using a member of their family, and of course that caused a lot of trauma for that person. But the person didn't care as long as they get whatever it is that they want, or they're able to hurt the person that they want to help. They didn't
yeah,
care whoever they threw under the bus. And then another thing is, keep gossipers at a distance. Anybody
yeah.
that gossips.
Always,
I'm a kind of
always.
person.
Gossiping is never good, people. At home,
Oh
at
my
work
god.
is never good. And actually, I can see a lot of parallel between, like what could happen in a personal life, in the personal life, and what could happen in a professional setup. And as you said, when you are, for example, you are new to a company, you're getting started on your job, so you try to befriend your coworkers, which is normal because you want to fit in, right? You want to be part of the team. And
Exactly.
it's easy, especially when you are new, to get trapped, in a situation that can be or can become toxic. So, like, or even if you are passionate about the work, and I had a previous client, she was working for this big international organization, and that's the organization she always wanted to work for. So she was passionate about her work, but her direct manager was a toxic person, and he was creating a toxic environment that would make her sick. But because she loved the company so much, she stayed in this environment to the point that she couldn't take it anymore, and she had to change department, right? So those things are real. Either it happens in a personal setup or in a professional setup. And we have a couple of comments here from Rehab Ahmed, who says, a great topic and so common in work, unfortunately. Yes, we know, like, a lot of people suffer from it. And Fambi Afolabi, who says, very insightful. So if you like what you are watching, what you have learned, and the tips that Marian shared in this live conversation, share it with your network. Send it via DM to someone that you think may be suffering, right? Let them know that they are not alone, and that there are, like, informations available for them to get out of such situation, because you don't have to suffer it to suffer in silence, and you don't have to go through such experience, right? It's a matter of choice. And Monica says, yeah, staying in a job because we love it, even though it's life
Threatening.
threatening. Okay, so staying in the job because we love it, even though it's life threatening, this is so suffering. It is. And unfortunately, too many people, too many people are experiencing it. That's why I wanted to bring you this topic today on the Stand Up from the Crowd podcast, because this is a topic that, can touch everyone.
Yep.
And none of us is fully protected from like experiencing like a toxic environment. But where it's important is to get the knowledge, the tools, to help you recognize the red flags,
And protect
and
yourself.
exactly. So you can take yourself out, you can pull yourself out of such situation. You can set up boundaries with some people in your family, in your friendship, or in your work environment, so you protect your well-being. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Protecting your well-being. So once again, Marianne, before we wrap up, show us your book and tell us where we can find it.
Okay. So my book can be found on Amazon. If you're ordering from the UK, it's amazon.co.uk. If you're ordering from generally, it's amazon.com. If you're ordering from Canada, it's amazon.ca. We also had a launch. I also have some copies with me. So if by any chance you have my phone number, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn, and I can send a copy to you by post. Yeah. So like you said, definitely. It's very important that you remove yourself from a harmful relationship, because if there's anything that COVID taught us, is that our mental health is very important. The example in the workplace that you just gave example of, I also experienced it, but of course I didn't include that in the book or anything, because it was a workplace. So even though it did happen, I could remove myself from that situation, and move on. But this one was more of, this one was happening on the ground. A lot of things were happening, a lot of gossiping, And then the other thing is, when you're in a situation where you see that someone keeps gossiping about the other person, you need to start distancing yourself from the person. And like you said,
100%.
setting boundaries. Let people know you by your boundaries. Let people know, oh, Darren doesn't like you gossiping about somebody else in front of her. I remember growing up, people would say, sometimes people would say that maybe I was, just because I'm this kind of person that I would rather not gossip about you. I would say whatever I needed to say in front of you that I could also say behind you. So some people took that as being rude. I'm from an African, country where respect is very high, But I
Yeah,
mean, your mental health is more important.
yeah,
Your mental health is important for you, it's important for your family. And then the other thing is, whatever happens to you has a ripple effect. That's what people don't really understand. It has a ripple effect on you, has a ripple effect on people around you. It can go down to your generation. You might have experienced a narcissistic abuse, and then the person with you, you take out aggression on that person. It becomes so commonplace. That person grows up with that same kind of environment, toxic environment. Person moves it on to the generation after them, and
yeah.
it's going and
They
going.
repeat they repeat the pattern because it's so
Exactly.
deep. It's so deep. Yeah. So
That's not what we want. We don't
exactly.
want generational, trauma. We want to heal from generational trauma. So it is so 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 important to, you know,
Yeah.
keep
And
yourself.
and
It's so so
talking about
important to protect yourself from toxic people.
yes, and talking about trauma, we have a comment from Esther who says some people experience trauma from such a relationship. In your opinion, what does one need to do to come over such trauma, and how should this relationship be handled if it's necessary to be in touch with this person? Ooh, those are good questions.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, I would say that with something like this, I'm guessing that this is in a relationship or a marriage setting. You should see a professional. You need to take the situation to a professional. A professional is more trained to handle such situations. And then by law, the of course the professional cannot go about saying what you've told them, to anybody. Whatever situation it is that you took to it, a registered therapist is kept there. If you're talking to other people about it, which is what we tend to do, I'm from an African background, and what happens is that we tend to take situations to people older than us or to our religious leaders. And but the thing is, those situations can be talked about. So take it. You need to get professional help. You need to go
Yeah.
to a registered therapist. Then the other part that says, if the person, like, so for instance, if you had a child with the person, how do you handle the situation? There's a portion of my book that talks about, there's a part of my book that talks about it, that talks about how you can handle this situation. It's a method called gray rock, So I'll just refer you back to my book, and it's just a 2-hour read, but it's packed filled with steps and ways that one can protect oneself from toxic people.
Thank you so much for your time, Marianne, for sharing your experience with us, and for sharing some of the tips available in your book. I'm sure it will help a lot of people. And again, you don't have to suffer, and you don't have to stay in a workplace or in a relationship where like you don't feel fulfilled, or that is impacting negatively your well-being.
Yeah.
You have the choice, right? So don't stay alone. Reach out to people, reach out to a professional, get out of this toxic environment so you can do you can be you, and you can enjoy life. Marianne, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you
And
for having me, Darren.
for those of you watching and listening, the podcast is available on all podcast platforms. And I will see you next week for another live episode of Stand Out from the Crowd. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.